Hello all. In this session, we are going to be learning about public IP, private IP, and elastic IP. So there is a broad difference between a public IP and how it acts with the instances that is associated with it, a private IP and how it is associated with the instance, and elastic IP that is provided as a service by Amazon itself. So in the previous session, we had created an instance. I already have the instance with me and it's still running. So let's go quickly check the IP of this instance. So we have a public IP here. So let's just note it down somewhere. I'm copying this IP. So this is the public IP. So let's name it as public. Now, let me copy the private IP. So this is the IP we had configured via the VPC instance. So we have the private IP. Now, so we should understand few things before running any EC2 instance. When there is a public IP assigned to the EC2 instance and when it is in the running state, it is still utilizing the public IP to access the resources from the internet. But say, if there is a change in the state of the instance, say I'm going to instance state, I am stopping the instance. Go ahead with stop. Now go to your instance. So let's wait for the status to change from stopping to stopped. Okay, now if the instance is stopped, if I go and check the IP of this instance now, so there are no public IPs available for this instance, but the private IP is still intact, which means every time the instance is stopped, the public IP is released. And let's try connecting this instance again. So let's just go to instance state and start the instance again. Go to the instances and wait for the status to get back to running and the status check to get back to 2x2 pass check. Yes, so before even the status is moving to active, we can see there is a public IP which is assigned to us. Now let's compare the previous public IP and the current public IP. It's completely different, which means every time there is a change in the instance state, the public IPs are assigned and de-assigned, unassigned basically, but your private IP is always going to be the same. So now let's try accessing the page which we had already configured in the previous session under the user data. So let's copy this. Let's try opening it in the private window. Still the page would be accessible. Continue. So the page is all accessible still. But if I try doing it with the private IP, let's open it in a new window. It will get loaded and loaded, but we wouldn't be able to access the file or the page. So let's close this. So private IP is something which is totally tied to the EC2 instance and it doesn't know where to access the resource from the internet. It's not aware of all those details. So all those details are taken care by the NAT. So there is going to be a NAT, which is Network Address Translation Protocol, that would be attached with the EC2 instance. That would be translating the private address to the public address, and that should be fetching the data from the internet through the gateway. So as far as the current example is concerned, we have configured IGW. So that is going to fetch the information back to the instances. So now let's see how Elastic IP works. So we had been discussing we can purchase Elastic IPs, which is provided as a service by Amazon. So let's go to Elastic IPs under your network and settings. Go with allocate Elastic IP address. So this is going to provision the IP addresses from the Amazon's pool of IPv4 addresses, which is already mentioned, which is again enabled. Allocate. Now select the IP which we just allocated. Go to Actions, Associate Elastic IP address. Now the IP address has to be associated with the instances, not the network interface. So EC2 instance is launched and we are going to associate it with the instance. And we have to choose the instance which is running. With the name of the instance is IGW instance. And we have to choose the private IP of the instance. So it is automatically going to generate it for you. All we have to do is just choose it. So once the private IP is chosen, associate it with your existing instance. So we can see there is an allocation ID that is given to us. Associated instance ID is given, which is the instance ID. And we have the private IP addresses, the network interface owner's account, which is the owner account of mine. So now if we go to the instances and select the instance, we can find the IP address which we just allocated. So let's try accessing the page from this IP address, the Elastic IP. So we would be able to access the page. Now let's close this, or let's minimize this. Now let's try doing the same operation we had done it for the previous IP before purchasing the Elastic IP. Now all that we have purchased it, let's see how it is going to respond to us, whether it will be released or it will be intact when we stop the instance. So I'm stopping the instance, getting back to the instance. The status of my instance is still stopping. So even after the state has changed to stop, the IP which we had purchased or allocated will always be the same, and it is going to stay intact with the existing EC2 instance. So we have to understand one thing. The Elastic IPs are charged. For how much ever IPs we purchase, we are charged for it. So if the IPs are used, we wouldn't be charged. But if it is not used, if it is just purchased and if it just put it in your account, and if the Amazon service is just running the Elastic IP and it is not allocating it to any other resources across the service provider's domain, then obviously we are going to get charged for it. So it would still be in unreleased state. So if we don't want the charge from the Elastic IP, we have to release it once the process of hosting your website is done or your development process is done. So now let's click on the ID of the instance. So the IP is still the same, the public IP. So fine. Now how do we release it again? So we have to go to again Elastic IPs. Select the IP, go to Actions, Release Elastic IP. The following address cannot be released because they are associated. Remove the association by actions. Okay. So we have to go to actions. Okay, so maybe we have to go to the allocated IP action, disassociate elastic IP. Click disassociate. Now we would be able to release the elastic IP. So we have to first associate and then allocate. And to release it, we have to disassociate and then we have to deallocate. Go to actions, release the elastic IP. So now let's get back to the instance. You can see there's no public IP that is associated with the instance now. And the instance is also in the state of stopped. I can even start it again. I would be given a new IP now. Let's go to instance state, start the instance. Okay, so there is a new IP which is given to us, which is completely different from any of the IPs that we had used. So that's about public IP, private IP, and elastic IPs. Thank you.